remained of Zephyrost at this point lingered only in thought, its spires and silence fading with every step Eira and Silas took northward, swallowed by the wind and the white of the ridges. The wind shrieked across the cliff face in bursts so sharp it left the ears ringing. The trail they followed had thinned to a splinter of rock etched along the mountainside, barely wide enough for feet and far too thin for mistakes. Eira moved with deliberate steps, her boots crunching against loose shale that shifted and slid beneath her weight, one hand trailing the jagged wall for balance. Mist hung heavy across the heights, so thick it seemed to move of its own will. The sun, if it still shone, was only a pale smudge behind the clouds. Every breath Eira drew felt thin and raw, like it had been filtered through glass. Ahead of her, Silas walked with the caution of one who knew what it meant to fall. His steps, though fluid, had become more deliberate, adapting to the erratic pull of the wind. Shoulders low, balance tight, he shifted with each gust, moving not with pride, but with instinct earned through exposure. Eira followed in silence. The cold bit through her skin, the stone beneath her boots shifted with every step, and the wind pressed louder now, threading through the gaps in the rock like it was searching for weakness. Each movement demanded attention, each gust tested her footing. This was no place for practiced forms or theory. Silas stopped suddenly and looked back, squinting into the wind.
"It's shifting faster,"
he called over the gusts.
"The bend ahead gets narrow. Stay sharp."
She nodded without a word. The knot in her chest tightened, but the wind was changing again, not just in direction, in mood. It no longer howled or screamed, but pulsed in staggered bursts, like breath drawn and held. There was a tension to it, a waiting. She could feel it beneath her skin. Eira narrowed her eyes as she was forced to step around a jutting shard of stone. Her fingertips brushed the wall for balance and stayed there. The path sloped downward, winding along a ridge so narrow it barely deserved the name. One misstep here, and there would be no ground left to correct it. Loose scree shifted beneath her heel. She adjusted her weight, and though the heirist's voice rose first in her mind, measured and clinical, it faded as another voice took its place. Silas, just a few days prior. Calm and instinctual. "Let the wind move you. You'll never win by fighting it." But the wind had begun to turn violent. It would shove her, then yank, then vanish, without rhythm or care. Silas had vanished around the bend up ahead. Eira hurried after him, the pressure in her chest mounting with each step. Then the mountain hummed. It began as a vibration through the soles of her boots, a deep, subtle tremor that crept upward into her spine. Her breath hitched. Around the curve, Silas's voice rang out, sharp and urgent.
"Eira, stop!"
She did, but it was too late. The ridge lurched beneath her, a sudden violent shift, not like a crack, but a wail, as if the mountain itself had been wounded. Somewhere behind her, the path gave way with a roar, the stone shearing into the abyss. Then the ground beneath her boots began to crumble. She staggered backward on instinct, reaching, searching for solid earth, but her foot met nothing, only open air. And Eira began to fall. Somewhere beyond the ledge, Silas was running, but it was his voice that reached her first, shredded by the wind, filled with a fear too sudden to hide.
"Eira!"
She heard him shout, but the wind swallowed the sound as she slipped backward off the ledge, the mountain ripping away from her. The world tilted, her stomach dropped. There was no thought, only falling. The cold tore into her, air screamed past her ears. The jagged cliff spun above her, then below her, then vanished into mist. Nothing but wind and the echo of her name. And then suddenly the wind surged, not like before, not wild or erratic, but intentional. It coiled around her mid-air, spiraling up from below like a great unseen hand. Her limbs jerked, then slowed. The weightless terror dulled, her body caught by something that wasn't there. She wasn't flying, not floating. She was being lifted, not gently, not kindly, but enough. A burst of invisible force snapped upward from her chest, raw and unshaped, and the air surged in response. She didn't command it. She barely called it. But whatever it was, it heard her, and it answered. The wind slammed her sideways, wrenching her from her descent. Her shoulder struck the cliff wall. Pain flashed white through her vision. Her hand, by luck or fate, found a rocky outcrop. She clung there, coughing, arms trembling, her boots scrabbling for purchase.
Hold on!
Silas's voice echoed from above. She didn't have the strength to reply. The stone cracked nearby, another tremor still shifting the mountains. But the fall had stopped. Somehow the world had not let her go. Then Silas appeared, leaping the fractured stone, landing beside her with the grace of one who had always belonged to the heights. He seized her arm and hauled her up with one powerful pull. She collapsed against the stone, gasping. For a long moment neither of them spoke, only the wind moved, soft again now, curling lazily around them as if nothing had happened at all. Silas still had a firm grip on her arm, though his eyes weren't on her anymore. They were on the space above, the air itself, as if expecting it to speak. Eira coughed and sat upright. Her limbs trembled, her palms were scraped, her shoulder bruised, but she was alive. The mountain had taken her into its jaws, and somehow the wind had saved her. The air around her was gentle now, very gentle. Not the chaotic thing that had shrieked through the heights moments ago, but something slower, almost cautious. Silas stared at her, wide-eyed and unsettled.
You were gone. I saw it.
Eira's eyes met his in agreement, but was unable to speak the words. He glanced up, searching the sky like it owed him an answer.
What did you do?
She looked down at her hands, as if the answer might be written there.
I didn't do anything,
she whispered.
I just fell.
And
it caught me.
The words hung between them, absurd in their simplicity.
The wind,
she said quietly.
It caught me.
Silas glanced around them. Dust still floated in the air, caught in slow spirals like dancers who hadn't heard the music stop.
That's not something the wind does,
he muttered.
No,
she agreed.
It isn't.
They didn't move. Neither wanted to be the first to break whatever strange stillness had settled in. Then, as if losing interest, the spirals unraveled and vanished into the air. Silas rose.
Come on, we need to move. This ridge won't last much longer.
Eira stood, slower, the weight of something new pressing into her bones. They walked on, one uncertain, the other unwilling to admit he was. Behind them, the path lay broken, but above, the wind moved softly, not like a current any longer, but like something that had begun to notice them. Cael'Auryn rose from the western cliffs of Illyrian, like a crown of sanctified light, gold-veined and immense, carved with purpose into the bones of the land. Its vaults curved skyward in perfect symmetry, each tier lined with radiant arches and sun-forged spires. The marble of its upper reaches caught the morning light like polished ivory, gleaming above the mists. No Urbi in the realm stood higher, nor ruled with greater certainty. Here the radiant council governed all of Illyrian. Here the light was the law. The faithful called it perfect. Those who doubted spoke only behind closed doors, if they spoke at all. At its heart stood the Cael'Auryn, tallest of all structures throughout Illyrian, a tower carved from radiant quartz and threaded with living light. Its spire pierced the sky like a divine spear, visible from every district, every terrace. No matter where one stood in the capital, the tower watched. And within its blessed walls, no one privileged enough to enter dared raise their voice. The tower's interior echoed with restrained grandeur. Light did not scatter freely here. It was filtered, refracted, bent to form. Its corridors whispered with edicts and oaths, and its ceilings bore braided inscriptions too ancient for speech. At its center, behind multiple layers of concord gates, lay the chamber of Lustra. It was here Primarch Aurevas sat, elevated upon a dais of white stone. Robed in pale regalia, his bearing composed, but something in his stillness had changed. His fingers curled around the arm of his throne, shaped like a flame frozen in gold, and in that silence a figure approached and knelt, a commander of the second sigil.
"Rise,"
said Aurevas. The commander stood.
"We believe we have him, Radiant One. A report arrived before dawn. A settlement beyond the Lumirathiel. Small and isolated. Brithlow, they call it. A figure matching Cael'Tharion's description has been seen among the townspeople. Alone, wounded. Traveling with an auric stallion."
At that moment the air shifted, as if the chamber itself recoiled or prepared. The high prophetess of the Virelda stepped forward, her golden veil catching the angled light, its threads humming faintly as though alive.
"It is as it was shown,"
she said.
"The light stirs, and the hour draws near."
The Primarch's gaze lingered on the gilded stone.
"How close is the vision to the waking world?"
The prophetess did not pause.
"It has already begun."
His jaw tightened.
"Then speak plainly. What must be done?"
"What must be?"
she said.
"Light does not halt. One chooses only whether to stand in its path."
He turned his head slightly.
"I have no time for your riddles."
She held her silence, then replied,
"It was not given for you to question."
A long silence followed, and then the Primarch turned his gaze back to the commander.
"Send a full company immediately. Brithlow is to be surrounded without notice. Take him quickly."
The commander nodded.
"And if he resists again?"
"Then bind him and drag him back to the Cael'Auryn. If you must, break him. If he dies, let the dust claim him."
The commander hesitated.
"The village. It is small. If he flees, there may be casualties."
Aurevas' gaze did not shift.
"Then they are the cost of clarity."
His fingers pressed firm into the arm of the throne. The prophetess lifted her veiled face toward the commander before her. Her voice was soft, but final.
"The flame must end before it forms. If he is allowed to sow what was seen, it cannot be undone."
The commander bowed low, first to the Primarch, then to the prophetess.
"It will be done."
Near the dais, half veiled in the prism's descending light, sat a youth in ceremonial white, barely past his 13th year. His hands were clasped, his silence expected. He had been brought to observe, as all heirs were, to learn not by word but by witness, to see how judgment was cast in the name of light. He said nothing, but his eyes did not leave his father. The Primarch did not glance toward him, but his voice dropped, firmer now, as if to remind the chamber of something older than law.
"It is time to witness what is required to keep the divine line unbroken."
Beside him, the prophetess gave no reply. Her head bowed once more. No one spoke. The silence suffocated the chamber. In the distance, the sound of reverent bells marked the passing of another hour beneath the watch of the tower. The commander turned and withdrew in silence, the echo of his steps fading into the corridor. Outside, the last light of the sun slipped behind the golden spire as the Cael'Auryn watched the horizon with eyes made of sun-hardened stone. The rain had fallen hard since dawn, not the usual light mist that drifted from Twathlyn's skies, but a heavy silver curtain that flattened the grass and clung to the world like grief. Brenneth and Fenwin took shelter beneath a low stand of arching trees, their branches knotted into a canopy thick enough to keep out most of the downpour. Even so, water dripped from their cloaks, pooling in the hollows of their boots and soaking into the roots. Brenneth sat on his haunches near the trunk, scanning the shadowed tree line. His voice was level, but tired at the edges.
We should be near Cael'Auryn by now. Half a day north if we keep pace.
Fenwin leaned back against a slick root, drawing her knees up to her chest.
Let's just rest here a while and enjoy the rain.
He looked at her, long enough for silence to stretch between them, before glancing away. They'd been walking for days, following no particular stretch or path, only Fenwin's sense that something in the north might lead them to the heart of the withering. Now she barely spoke of it, letting their steps wander without explanation, and Brennath, whose patience had weathered storms before, felt the cracks deepening. Fenwin's eyes narrowed as she spotted something unique, a low mound rising from the hillside, half swallowed by moss and thorn. A dark gash split its side like a broken mouth beneath the soil. Something about it pulled the breath from the air.
What kind of hollow is this?
She asked, already stepping toward it. Brennath's boots squelched behind her as he approached the opening, parting the wet vines. The walls curved like a rib cage of timber, worn smooth by time. Faint grain lined the hollow, unmistakable and alive with memory. What he saw stilled him, not for its strangeness, but for its truth.
It's not a burrow,
He said slowly.
I can't believe it. I think this is Othielthar.
Fenwin turned to him, blinking rain from her lashes.
A soulbranch. You're serious?
He crouched at the mouth of the hollow, brushing his fingers along the slick grain.
Or what's left of one. I've never known anyone who's seen one. Most say they've passed to legend, that the deep roots reclaimed them centuries ago, but somehow this one's still here.
He paused for a moment, running his hand along the soaked bark.
It was said Laerthorn gave them to us in the first days, the tallest and mightiest of his creations, the Velathrin, they were called. He laid them down and hollowed them from within, shaped not by force but by his love. Sanctuaries for his children before we learned to live wild in the deep wood. The soul branches were our first homes, before craft, before songs, before even names.
Her eyes lit with something between wonder and defiance.
Then we should go in.
Brennath's jaw tensed.
Are you serious? We came north. You said that's where we'd find answers.
And maybe we have.
She said.
You said it yourself. Soul branches were for the first Fae. If anything remembers what the forest is forgetting, it's in there.
Brennath took a step back from the entrance.
I don't understand you. You don't plan. You just drift, one moment to the next, like the world will shape itself around you.
Fenwin's expression faltered.
Is that what you think I'm doing?
I think you don't know your path, and you wear wonder to hide it.
The rain surged harder and wind pulled at the branches above them. Thunder murmured somewhere distant. She didn't shout. Her voice came low even.
I may not have maps in my head, but I came out here to find the cause of the withering, same as you.
This isn't some wandering fable, Fenwin,
He snapped.
I'm trying to find some way to hold this realm together, not chase ghosts in hollow trees.
Her face hardened.
No, you're out here because control makes you feel safe. Because if you stop marching forward, you might have to admit you're afraid like everyone else.
The words struck deep, where old truths go to root. He didn't answer. She stepped toward him, the rain flattening her hair against her cheeks.
You think you carry the world like it owes you something. You want the world to move in straight lines and curse it when it doesn't. That isn't strength, Brennath. That's fear in a sharper coat.
Brennath erupted.
You think I wanted you here?
The words came too fast, too sharp.
I'd have done better alone than having some flighty, insufferable Faelette follow me halfway across a rotting world.
Silence. Just the rain now. Loud, hard, relentless. And Brennath saw it. Something shatter just behind her eyes. Fenwin's mouth moved slightly, but no words came. There was a brief moment of stillness. Then she turned, adjusted her soaked cloak with trembling hands, and stepped into the soulbranch. Brennath didn't follow. She vanished into the dark of the hollow, her footsteps light and fading. When he turned back, the trees seemed to have shifted, leaning inward as if to whisper amongst themselves. He adjusted his cloak and walked north into the open storm, alone.